We're a video production company, and we have do documentary style videos for nonprofits, small businesses, foundations. And again, I'm not an expert on Zoom, but what I do know is I've over 25 years of working with cinematographers is how to set up a good looking shot, how to set a good interview shot. And whether you all realize it or not, in this COVID era, you now have a new job title, and that is that of cinematographer. So you want to do everything you can to make these shots look beautiful. And you know, the reason people hire my company or a video production company isn't just because they want things to look great. Obviously, they want things to look and sound great, but they don't want the iPhone shaky video, because any kind of bad video really distracts from your message, right? So anything that's where you can't really see, or it's kind of shaky, or the sound is bad, you're distracting from the actual message that you're trying to get across. And to me, the same is true for Zoom. You may not do all of these things for every call you have. You may, you know, be having a happy hour with your friends and not care to make everything look beautiful. But for the things that really matter, if you have a sales call, if you're doing some sort of presentation, you want to make sure that you can do everything possible to just have a great looking and sounding shot, so you're not distracting from your message. You know, you don't want to do, and not to, you want to avoid these kinds of things. And I kind of, you know, I'm not picking on anyone, and I don't want to pick on anyone today, honestly. But we will have time at the end if we want to kind of critique each other's shots and see what we can do to make them look better. So anyways, I know everyone is at different levels of technology and comfort and all that kind of stuff. But I'm hoping just to share some things that you might be able to take away to make those shots look better. So let me give you an overview of what we're going to talk about today. We'll go through some locations, talk about your location and your backgrounds, framing, eyeline, lighting, sound, wardrobe, testing your shot, all of those things. And as I go through, again, as I said before, I'm not a Zoom expert, so I don't even see, I know I usually see where the chat is, but maybe, okay, maybe it'll pop up. But you can also, Courtney, you can flag me too, or if you guys have a burning, if you have a burning question, just unmute yourself. I'm happy to answer, because we do have a smallish group. Okay, so with that said, I want to start by saying, with all of this stuff, so when we go on a production shoot, and I'm going to film someone and do some sort of interview, I never say to someone, oh, we'll be five minutes and we'll be ready. It usually takes us a good hour to set up a shot. We will go to a location. Often I'm filming in.
Hey, Debbie, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you. It's still like showing the first slide.
Oh, thank you for telling me. That is so weird. Sharing is paused. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. I think that you have to like maybe start the slideshow.
No, it's saying sharing is paused. Bring your shared window to the front.
Huh.
Oops. You don't see any of that. All right, hold on. Let me stop the share and then I'll start it again.
Okay.
Sorry, you guys. Again, not an expert on Zoom. All right, hold on a second. Let's try this. Share screen. Okay. What do you?
There we go.
Okay, sorry. So let's go back. Okay, so you didn't see any of this. Okay.
Yeah, it was just like in the corner. It was like on the side of the.
Okay, but you all see it now?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So anyway, so these are the beautiful shots. This is obviously with a good camera and good lights and all that. And I don't profess for anyone to have their Zoom shots look like that, but we also don't want to do this. We don't want to look like that. And I kind of, you know, blurred their faces out a little bit, but we'll get to some of the no-nos of what those are. But we want to just try and make it look as good as possible. So I talked about what we're going to go through. Again, feel free to interrupt me. So the biggest thing I wanted to say, though, is to give yourself time and don't rush to do this, because it takes time to look around, to set up where are all the best places for you to place yourself, to put lights, for audio. And we'll talk at the end about how to test out your shots and things like that. But definitely give yourself time, especially if it's like a really important call. I do this for I've changed and I'll show you too, I've changed my setup several times when I have an important, you know, meeting, just to try and get it right. And again, even this shot, like as Connie said before we started, like usually I have a light flooding in from the window, but it's pretty dark out. So, but we'll talk about tricks to fix that. Okay, so let's first talk about your location. So most of us are in our homes, and you're limited by where you can be. right? And some people may be by themselves. Often people have a partner or a spouse. You might have kids, you might have a dog, all these distractions, right? And you may also not have that many places where you can have a door and close that door. So I know in my home, I thankfully have a home office and I have a door right behind me. So I have that. My only two other spaces I could even think that I would do it at my house would be my bedroom, but there's no comfortable place to sit on my bed and feel professional. And I also have a screened-in porch that's small, and there's issues with being outside as well that we'll talk about. So this is pretty much it for me. But think about for you in your home, what are those spaces that might be private that you can close the door, but you also want to think about the size of your space. And ideally, when we're on a production shoot, I always look for the longest room because what I want is this depth of field, it's called. Basically, that there's a lot of space behind somebody. You never want to stick someone right up against a wall. It's not very pleasing to the eye. It just looks very crunched together. So the nicest is when you can have a lot of space behind you. Um, and you also want to look at, what are your light options? Where are the windows in your room? The window source, out sunlight is really our strongest light source. And so that's the best light source. So you want to take into consideration where those windows are, and then also how adjustable your space is. Now, everyone has different things. You might have a phone that you're using, you might have a laptop that you can move, but you might have a computer monitor that you can't move at all. So it's sort of thinking through all of those issues and what's going to work best for your situation. And you also want to take into consideration sound. Um, Besides the fact that you can close the door or not, there may be things within that space that are going to be really distracting. So for instance, like in my office here, there's this thing behind me is a big backup storage unit. I don't think about it because it's on all the time. But if I were to stop and be quiet, there's a really loud hum when that is on. So if I ever have a really important call, I shut it down. If your best space might be your kitchen, you just want to think about the fact that refrigerators actually make quite a lot of noise. They're very humming in the background, or air conditioners, things like that. So you want to just think about when you're thinking about a space to do a call or to do a Zoom, what's going to be interfering that you might not have control over, or what can you do to control it. And then the other big thing is having an adjustable background. Well, either the adjustable background and or your movable laptop or phone. For instance, in my small office, I have a 500-pound file cabinet. It's a fire safe file cabinet that I bought 15 years ago when I started my business because I do a lot of work with families and like irreplaceable photos. And I was so worried that God forbid I had a fire in my house, fire would burn down and I'd ruin their photo. So I have this huge file cabinet that is never going to be moved until we move out of here. So things like that, think about what can be moved around. And my main thing is just, don't wherever, like this is not where I usually sit and work, where my computer is right now for this call. Don't just open up your computer and think, oh, this is fine. Because oftentimes it's not, if you really want to have a great looking shot. So a word about virtual backgrounds. So sometimes you don't have a lot of flexibility. You might be working in a closet, and you don't have a whole lot of room behind you, or just the background is not pleasing. Then you might want to use a virtual background. I think my preference is, for me personally, is not to do that because it feels a little bit inauthentic. And also because if you don't have a nice green screen and it's not nicely lit behind you, like my hair will go in and out of the shot and it just looks really funny and kind of fake. That said, there are some really nice ones that you can get. I took a screenshot from Canva. Canva, if anyone knows, canva.com. There's all kinds of great stuff and it's free. There's a lot of parts that are free and they have virtual backgrounds and ones that you can personalize. And actually my virtual background, I can show you later, is this actual shot with my name and my logo, and it was really easy to do. So if you need to do that, basically what you have to do is just you download it to your computer beforehand, the photo. And then if you go in your settings, we can look at that later, and you just choose the photo that you want and add it to virtual backgrounds, and then it'll just show up. And then if you want to go back and delete it, you can just say none. So that's definitely an option for people that want to do that. So once you've sort of figured out your space, you want to take some time to set up that shot. So if I'm in the field and I'm doing production, before I set up any lights or do anything like that, I'm going to put down my tripod because I want that steady, nice shot. So with a laptop, it's pretty easy. With a computer monitor, it's pretty easy. You know you're going to be on a flat, stable surface. If you have a phone, these things are very movable. So you want to make sure that your phone is on some sort of stand, that it's steady, sturdy. Again, the whole goal of all of this is to be the least distracting as possible to not take away from your message. So also ideally make sure it's horizontal. So you're in that same frame of the Zoom, make sure it's charged, obviously. The other thing I would say is, I've been on, I'm sure you guys have too, been on Zoom calls where people are on their phone and they're talking on their phone and they're walking down the street and it's bumping along and it's kind of making me seasick a little bit and you hear them huffing and puffing. I was on a call last night for something personal, but it was a big group and this woman was like laying down in her car because she was on a road trip and she was feeling like she gets car sick, right? So like I don't need to see that. Like just so I guess my point is, don't be that person. Turn off, like if you can't be in a good space, this is just my own opinion. If you can't be in a good space where you can have a conversation, just put your phone, put the video off, like some people have done here, and like Dan has a profile picture, right? And that's really easy to do. Basically, you have to go online onto the Zoom account and you can just download a profile picture so it doesn't just say your name or nothing. Just grab a nice shot of yourself, put it in there, and then when you ever don't have video on, hi Dan, thank you for saying that. Then you'll just have that picture. So that's just it's a nicer way, I think, and to me more professional than and makes other people less seasick and distracted. Um, so let's talk about framing your shot. So when we frame shots for production, typically I'm always about wanting to be on the same eye line as someone. So if I have a chair, I always try and make sure that whatever chair I have is actually the same height as the other person's chair. And or if that person's really tall, that maybe I'm sitting on some phone books because I'm actually really short, so that I have the same eye line because it just looks so much more just looks better to be on that same neutral eye line. So there are, when people do film, sometimes they'll want a certain perspective. They have this thing called the low angle or the hero angle, where someone's kind of looking, let's see, like they're down, like they're looking down at the person. I'm trying to, like, not doing a very good job. Like, so I'm higher up looking down, right? Um, I don't think that works great for Zoom. I also like you can do this high angle shot, right, where they're no one does it like that, but I've seen sort of some things like that, and that's sort of like a place of weakness. So you want to be on that same eye line. So how do you do that? Well, first you got to know where your camera is. So right now I'm like looking. There's a green dot on my laptop. I have a Mac laptop, and so what I've done is I have a ruler, and so I take the ruler and this is not very scientific, but I take the ruler and I kind of make sure that that ruler is on the same eye line, excuse me, as that green dot. So how did I do that? I have two board games that are stacked up underneath my laptop. So it's at the same height. Normally my laptop is on the desk and it's, and then I'm having that high angle. So it just looks so much better if you can do everything you can to raise yourself up and be on that same eye line. Let's talk a little bit about headroom. So headroom is a space between your head and the rest of the frame. It's challenging because this is not a real camera, right? So my tilt is the top of my laptop. But I would say something like this, like no one needs, like, why are you looking at my ceiling? You don't need to be looking at my ceiling, right? So you want to frame it so that they have maybe just a little, I don't know how many inches that is, a little bit of headroom right there. Again, like for an interview shot, usually I'm like on one side or the other when I'm doing documentary. But when I'm doing something where I'm looking straight at someone at the camera, I usually center frame it, which I would do for Zoom as well. Or think of it almost like an anchor person, that you're centered when you watch the news, like they're kind of centered and they're straight on. And you kind of want to have I would say this sort of head and shoulders kind of thing. You don't want to be so close, like no one needs to see that me that close, but you also don't want to be so far away that you're like, who is she part of the conversation, right? You want to be sort of, and I think everyone's pretty much, on that, but so you kind of want to be, frame yourself up, give yourself a little less headroom in the middle there and be looking at that green dot. And also then look behind you. So once you've kind of framed it up, you want to look behind you and see what's distracting back there. What might I need to move so that things aren't growing out of my head? Like actually, like it'd be better if I was over here, or, um, it's challenging in our offices. Like there's only so much we can do, or even wherever we are in our space. But when it matters, really try and get rid of those distracting things. Even things like, so like when I go on a shoot and I want to set someone up in their chair. I'll sometimes sometimes I work with families and I'll be in a home and they have these gorgeous big like chairs with high backs, and someone will be like, "Oh, can we use this chair? It's so beautiful." And I was like, "Oh, it is really beautiful. Do you have a folding chair?" I literally want the most simple chair because I don't want to see the chair. I want to see the person. So I don't want a high back chair, and I'm not picking on you, Heather. But when I say like, so Heather's chair, I see a lot of the chair. Ideally, I want to just see Heather. So if you have a more simple chair that's comfortable, it's nicer to see the person and not be distracted by that chair. And again, you're just really trying to look, and it's really hard. Like it feels really strange to me sitting here looking at this green light and not looking at you guys. But if I'm looking at you guys, you're like, where is she looking, right? So if you can try to look at that green light, sometimes you can, if I have a call with just like one other person, I'll try and put their picture, right underneath the green dot, so it's a little bit easy for everyone. Um, any questions so far about framing? Anyone wants to ask? Not, I will keep going. Okay. Okay, let's talk about lighting. Lighting is so hard. It's such a hard, I mean, there are people, that's all they do. That's their whole job is lighting. Lighting is really hard. I've gone to classes for lighting and I still don't know what I'm doing all the time. It's really challenging. And it's also really challenging because we're working now with cameras that are not really set up to be professional cameras. So you can add on to cameras. We'll talk add on cameras. But you want to just do the best with what you've got and work it to your advantage as much as you can. And the number one thing I would say is, and I don't know, I haven't looked at everyone's, and again, I'm not going to pick on people, but, and I'm sure you guys have seen this in your calls. If you have a window, don't sit in front of it. Don't have the window be behind you, because that's going to do what's called silhouetting. So the window source is your greatest light source. So if the camera's looking at you and you're in front of that window, it's going to the window. And so you're going to be darker and in silhouette. And it's also, so these cameras, at least all these automatic ones on your laptops and stuff, you can't adjust them, and they're set up for what's called auto gain. So, and I don't know, it's not really doing it for mine a little bit. You can kind of see that the light kind of shifts. So if you're sitting in front of a window and clouds are going by, then it's actually making it even worse because the light is just going to keep changing. So you want to make sure that you use the window to your advantage and have it in front of you, or in other places, but definitely never behind you. The other thing, so I'll show you, this is my normal shot. This is normally where I sit in my office. Do you see this awful, like I love this light when it's on in my office, but for a video shot, it's horrible. So you want to make sure you don't have any super bright lights because where does your eye go? It goes right to that light. It's very distracting. So try not to have super bright distracting lights in your shot. So the thing you want to make sure is that your largest light source, whatever that is either in front of you or about 45 degree angle in front of you. Again, your best bet usually, not today, is, and not right now because it's whatever it is, 5:30, is that light from the outside is usually best. But there are other ways, and we'll talk about how to add in light. But one really kind of cool trick is with your monitor, you can actually increase the brightness. I'm going to just play with this for a second. So I'm taking the brightness up and down off my monitor. It's making everyone else dark, but it's also making me brighter and darker, right? Do you see that on my face? Do you see my face getting darker and brighter? So that's a trick because it's reflecting onto me. So that's another trick you can use to give yourself more light. In your office or in the space wherever you are, You might even want to look at, what are the light sources you have and using the ones that are better for video. LED lights are typically the best. They're the most kind of pleasing light for video. They also don't generate a lot of heat. Um, Fluorescent lights are typically the worst. They give off this like green cast. So you want to try and avoid, if you can, not using fluorescent lights, and using lights that are good for video. So I'm going to walk you through a couple of things I did just as a like practice kind of thing. So I have, if you can see, I have this lamp back here, which is some sort of LED. So when my computer is over here, what I can do is I can take that lamp and I can bounce it off of a wall. If you have a white wall, it works great. Or if you even have like a big piece of like white poster board or foam floor, you can kind of bounce it off of that and then it reflects back on you. If I just took that lamp and put it on my face, it would look super harsh and just really ugly. But if you have a soft bounce source, um, it just looks much nicer. So that's one trick, is to take your light and bounce it off a wall, bounce it off of a card, or you could even take some tin foil and put it on kind of the dull side on a piece of paper and have that as a bounce. And again, all these shots I'm showing you, none of these are beautiful. I don't love any of these shots, but I'm just giving you some examples. So at least the light on my face is kind of even, but it is sort of still dark. Now this is me on a brighter sunny day, and this is sitting in front of just the window. And now you can see there's more light on my face there, but it's also, you're mixing light sources, so it sort of looks a little bit funky. This third option, and which is sort of what I have right now, is I've added in, so I have a professional light here that's actually on right now, and I'll show you. If I turn that off, so now this is just the overhead light in my office, but now I filled it in, and so now I have some better light on me. So I think the light here, I think, looks the best because it's a little bit more pleasing and more even, but this is a mess. Like, I mean, look at that. Like, you should not have all this distracting stuff behind you. So I've obviously cleaned up my area a little bit for this call. So those are just some things to think about. Again, so you want to light your face from that front facing angle. So the indirect light is what I'm talking about when you kind of bounce something off. So it's not harsh right on your face. There's something called a ring light, which you guys may have heard about. I'll show you a picture of it in a moment. They're these small lights, and they're booming now because of these Zoom meetings. People are buying them. They're kind of hard to get, but they're like a little donut shaped light. It's an LED light, and you could just stick it on your desk. You can put it on a little holder or something. And it's kind of like the equivalent of having this. I'll show you, it might burn your, so I have this like umbrella light right here, you can see. It's a much easier version of that. And it's a really nice option. It's something that if you are doing a lot of these kinds of calls, if you're presenting a lot, it might be worth the investment. It may not be, but that's just something to think about. One other thing I've noticed, I don't know if anyone else has noticed this, be careful if you wear glasses. So I was on a call, I think it was like a telehealth call with someone that had glasses on, and the glare from whatever light was on the glasses, like I could see what they were doing kind of on their monitor. I was seeing that they weren't necessarily paying attention to me and they were doing stuff on their computer. So just a note. Oh, that was okay. Someone just blew a fuse in my house. See this? Lovely. Okay, so here is the ring light. This is one that someone suggested to me. I think it's on Amazon. But as you can see, the fastest delivery is like middle of July. There are other places that you can get these at, but it's just this nice little light. And what's really nice is if you are someone that uses a phone, there's a phone stand in there that you can attach to it. So it's a really nice, it's very easy to use, and it looks really nice. And they're not that expensive. Obviously $12.99 plus, it's not a whole lot of money. So if that's something you're considering, it's a really good option. Any questions about lighting before we move on to audio? Anyone have any lighting questions? No.
Well, I do.
Yeah.
So I have my office set up in a large family room. That's where I'm sitting now, is not where I normally sit. And I have overhead lighting, which is far away because it's a very tall ceiling. And I have thought that the lighting wasn't very good. So this ring light thing, this is a clip-on And I guess these are just different colors. So can you achieve the same effect with like a desk lamp that I already have?
So
That
that's what I,
clip-on thing?
yeah, so it depends a little bit on your desk lamp. And if it's an LED, you know, what kind of bulb is in that desk lamp, right? So that's one thing. I think like this is just a nice, soft, pleasing light. Your desk lamp, I think what you could do, again, it would be more of a bounce. I wouldn't probably put your desk lamp right up against your face. Um, like I could show you, well, it's just what I'm gonna go through at the end how you can test this out on your own. But I would play with it and see how it looks. But I think it's probably going to be too harsh to just. Are you? Is a desk lamp like this, like a one with an arm?
Oh, it's an old-fashioned thing. I could put any kind of bulb in it. I mean, I could put an LED bulb
Yeah.
in it instead of the incandescent that is in there. I just
So
will it bounce? Does it bounce? It has to be either aluminum foil or white, like colored wallpaper. Will
I
it do the same thing?
ideally you could put like a thing. So another option is so what we usually do with lights is you put it's called diffusion. So you put diffusion in front of it to make it a nice softer light. So when I'm thinking about your desk lamp, I'm thinking it's going to be a really harsh light.
Yeah.
So you could concoct something if you wanted to, which is I think it's going to be a lot of effort, but you could put something up where you have like it looks kind of gauzy. I could send you what I'm thinking of. I can't think of it. And just so something that the light is going through so it's not harsh on you. So it's diffusing it,
Got
if
it.
that makes sense. So, all right, did that answer your question a little bit? I
Yeah.
think it's,
Yeah, that was helpful. I'll have to do a little experimenting. I don't know what to
yeah.
do about I don't know what to do about the glasses thing because
Don't worry. I mean, don't worry about the glasses so much. Just be aware so that if you're not paying attention to someone that they may be able to see. Though yours don't look like they have a whole lot of glare in them, so I can't really tell.
that's
That's good. So, but yeah, I think that the thing with the light with a desk lamp is you just want it to be a softer, more pleasing source. So if you're just shining a spotlight on yourself, it's not going to be so, it'll look a little bit harsh. So whatever you can do to soften that up, that's why I would recommend either a bounce or something in between that light that kind of diffuses it. I'm trying to think, I'll brainstorm a little bit if there's anything I can think of that's like a homespun element that could diffuse a desk lamp. That's a great idea. Anyone else have a question?
Debbie, it's Mary
Yeah.
Robinson.
Hi.
Hey, how are you?
Hi. Good. How are you?
Thank you for doing this. So I
Sure.
just wanted to ask for your feedback. So this is where I normally work, and my team kind of worked with me. You'll notice I do have a window behind me, but so, I mean, sometimes I close those windows, but so I've got some people who are, kind of into this stuff on my team. They told me that was okay. I have a light set up here. It's a little teeny light. And I use this all the time. I also have a light to the left where light comes in. And this is my stuff behind me. So I'm just asking for your candid feedback.
So we're gonna do that. I'm totally gonna get to that. I think you weren't here when we started.
I wasn't sorry.
No, that's no problem. So I think at the end, I'm gonna go through everything and then we're gonna do, whoever wants to do a critique, we
Okay.
can do that together. If that's cool.
Sounds great.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. All right. Anyone else before we start talking about audio? Okay. So let's talk about audio. So I mentioned before, when you're thinking about your space and where you are, you want to do everything you can to kind of listen to that room and think about what's obvious, what might not be obvious to get rid of all those potential interruptions, distractions, noises. So for instance, I do a lot of filming in people's homes. One of the first things I do when I walk in is I tell them, where are all your landlines? And I sit there and I turn off all the ringers. Because the worst thing is when I have a great interview and someone's telling me a great story and then the phone rings. And then we have to do it all over again. So, turning off landline phones, cell phones. I often will tell people if they have pets, again, this is for interviews, but whatever you can do to dogs barking, things like that. I will also say like even outside calls. So sometimes you can get a really nice shot sitting outside. The hardest thing though is even if no one's mowing their lawn or there's no cars honking, even just the birds chirping, as much as I like hearing birds chirping, sometimes I'll be on a call and everyone's mic is open and someone's talking, but I can hear the birds even louder than the person talking. So those are things that are kind of distracting. So if you're the one that's kind of presenting or it's your sales call, I would probably recommend not being outside because there's so many things that can happen outside that are just beyond your control. Obviously, like closed doors, windows, noisy appliances, I think I talked about before, like family know or whoever else is around, but really try and eliminate as much as you can and just be thinking about what are some of those distractions, noises and things like that. So let's talk about microphones and speaker options. So there's kind of give you the good, better, best options here. So your computer, if you have a computer or a laptop, whatever, it usually comes with built-in microphone, usually. It's fine. It'll do the trick. It's not, to me, it's definitely not the best sound you can get. The same thing with your phone if you're using your phone. The next I would think is if you had some sort of wired headphone or earbuds. One thing I want to point out, so these are some wired headphones, and I was on a call the other day with someone that had these. You want to be aware of where the microphone is. And I believe for this one, it's like right here. She was wearing it and she kept tapping her microphone. And every time she did, it was so loud and so distracting. So just, you want to be aware. And that happens actually when we're doing interviews as well. We'll mic someone and they'll get really excited and they'll tap their microphone and it just ruins the sound and we have to do the whole thing again. So just be aware of whatever it is that you're using for a microphone, where that is, so you don't tap it because it actually it sounds really loud. The next best I would think is either wireless headphones or earbuds. Like I have these earbuds in here and it's pretty amazing. I think the microphone is actually much better than I did some tests and much better than my computer microphone was. I love these earbuds because you can't even really see that they're in my ear. They're very non-distracting. I've seen other people that have like the big headphones and they're probably great for sound and microphone. I find them a little bit distracting because most people don't go to a meeting with big headphones, but I think if that's what you have and that's works the best for you, then that's what you should use. The last, obviously, best option would be to invest in an external microphone, a lavalier or stand microphone that you can plug into the computer. It has to be one that's good for the computer and has a connection. I personally don't have one of those because, again, I don't do a whole lot of these meetings, but they're not that expensive if it is something that you want to invest in, and it does make a really big difference with sound. So definitely you want to look at choosing the best quality that you can and whatever is the least distracting. There's also some settings you guys should be aware of. So Zoom has some auto things that are set up, but they don't always work so well. So a couple of things I would recommend. So this is when you go into your settings. Does everyone know how to get into their settings on Zoom? If anyone doesn't, I can tell them, but you can go into your settings and there's these different things here. So you want to make sure that this box, automatically adjust microphone volume, is unchecked. Because what happens is if it's auto adjusting, it will sometimes bring in other sources that you don't want that become louder than your voice. So you just want to turn that off, and you can even turn the sound all the way up so that people can hear you the best. And so these are, we'll talk later about testing, but so that's your input there, your microphone right there. And then if you go within this setting right here, if you click advanced, then you get to these settings as well. And you can, you want to click this show in meeting option to enable original sound. And there's something on your screen, you'll see that you make sure you enable it. And these two things here, suppress persistent background noise and suppress intermittent background noise, you want to disable those, especially if you're the main speaker. Often, even if you're giving a performance or you're singing, that tends to have the best audio. If you're someone that's just part of a Zoom and maybe you do have some sort of persistent hum or something in the background, then you might want to put those back on. And same with intermittent background noise. If you have a dog or something, you might want to enable those. But for everybody else, I would say you disable them. Okay, so here's some options to buy something. So here is a lavalier microphone that was recommended to me. I believe it's on Amazon. It's only about 20 bucks, and that one's pretty easy to get, looks like, and I can send you guys these links if you want them, anyone wants them afterwards. But again, they're really easy. They just plug into your computer. You just put a little lav right on your shirt, and you're good to go. And it sounds really, really nice. And there's also, for anyone that doesn't know about B&H Photo and Video, they're out of New York, and they had just about everything, and they have so many people there that can help you on the phone, and I've used them for years. And I know they've invested a lot in Zoom calling and having options for your Zoom. So this looks like a kit you could get. It's might be more than anyone wants, but if you really are into virtual backgrounds, they have these green and blue screens that you can put behind you, so that will be more even if you want a virtual background. It comes with, it looks like a ring light, comes with some microphones. So I would highly recommend, if it's something that you're interested in investing in, to take a look at B&H Photo and give them a call and ask for their suggestions, because they're really helpful. Okay, let's talk a little bit also about what to wear, because most people don't necessarily think about that, and I think a lot of us have been maybe working in our PJs or working in our kind of casual clothes. But you want to, and I tell this to people when we're doing shoots as well, some of the colors that look best on camera, there are colors that are better than others, and usually jewel tones are colors that work really well. So I would say blues, greens, purples, pinks, those kinds of colors tend to work really well on camera. All white, I know people say, I look really good in black. All black is not great for the camera. And actually same for the all white, it's kind of hard for the camera to adjust. So I tend to, if it's something, obviously, like if it's a Zoom call with your friends, wear whatever you want. But if it's something that's important to you and you're trying to look your best, I would go for the jewel tones. Try to avoid anything with a really intricate pattern, like a houndstooth or just anything that with really tiny patterns on it. It has this moire effect that can sometimes make the camera go a little nutty and be distracting. And again, we want to be as the least distracting as possible. So I typically say solid colors are best. Also be aware of any, if you're someone that talks with your hands a lot and you have a dangly bracelet or anything like that, that's going to make a lot of noise. I usually end up taking those off of people when I'm doing interviews, because they get really, really loud and distracting. Also, this is one that people don't think about, especially for women. If you have a lower cut top, and you're framed like this, it can kind of make me look like you're not wearing any clothes. So just be careful about, I've had interviews before where they're wearing this really nice blouse and it's really low cut. And if we have a close-up shot, it just looks awkward. So just be careful about that with what you wear. I said, so let's get to this part about testing ahead. So has everyone been familiar with these settings? I hope so. But this is what I was saying before. When you go into your settings, so this is from the Zoom app. You have to have the Zoom app downloaded to your laptop or computer. And you want to click this little gear button that's right below your picture, your initials. And you'll get into all these different settings. And what's wonderful about this, especially for the person, I don't know your name, I don't see a name on yours, but that was asking about the desk lamp, is you can then click on video. You're not on a Zoom call, you're just in your settings, and this will come on and you can play all day long with how your video looks. So you can turn on and off lights, you can move your camera around, you can raise it up and down, you can take screen grabs of yourself so you can see it, if you want to see if your eye line's correct. It's a really great tool.
And maybe I can figure out how to put my name on the screen instead of my first initial and the first four letters of my last name.
So I'll tell you how to do that. So basically, if you go on to the online, if you go into your Zoom account online, you change your profile. So you want to change your profile to have your name,
okay.
And then you can also upload your profile picture. And so whenever you turn off video, it'll show your picture and with your name.
Okay.
So yeah, you have to do that. That's something you can't do in settings. You have to do that online.
Oh, actually. Okay. All right.
And I was playing with that myself yesterday. I noticed that. So yeah, so you can do that. I typically with these settings also mirror my video, basically just swaps how you look. I don't think that makes much of a difference. This touch up my appearance kind of gives you a little bit of a filter, so to speak. It makes you a little bit more, I'm trying to think of the right word, a little bit more soft. So I don't know, I don't tend to see that it makes a huge difference, but that's something you could play with. But again, you can go into these settings. I think I showed you before. I'm going to go back for a second, the audio settings. So when you go into your audio settings, you can you can click down on this drop down and you can play with the microphone. So what's really awesome is if you have, let's say you have headphones and you have your computer audio and even something else, you can have it go to that setting and then say test mic, and you speak into the microphone and it records it and then it plays it back for you. And so you can listen to that. You can listen to those sounds and see what sounds better to you. So I would highly recommend, again, giving yourself some time and working within those settings to make your shot look the best. Okay, and I wanted to just do a little critique about, see what we've learned sort of today. If people, this is sort of my audience participation portion. This was really funny. So I took this as a screenshot that I took from a webinar. These are people that all are in the film and video industry, and I was really kind of surprised at how not good some of these shots were. So does anyone want to take a guess at some of the things that they could improve or be better at? Anyone want to jump in?
Well, the middle one on the top row has a very distracting background, for one thing. And
Yeah.
I would say the lighting isn't too great. It looks like very harsh light on his face.
Yes, right. So you've got this big, you've got a spotlight here. So your eye's kind of going there, right? He has a harsh light on his face. He's also, look how much headroom he has and where he's sitting. He's like, are you in this conversation? He just feels so far away, right? It's just, he doesn't feel like he's part of it. Was that Monica? I don't know who's, I can't tell who's speaking. Anybody else see any issues with any of the other ones from what we've talked about?
I would say the photo on the bottom right, he's too far away and you don't feel like he's engaged. And the guy on the bottom left, it seems distracting with the things in the background.
Interesting. Okay. So to me, so yeah, they're a little bit distracting. But I think, so my issue with this guy, he's a little bit far back. I don't think he's so far back. My issue, one of the reasons I was thinking about him is he's got this chair. To me, it's all the stuff in the background that's distracting. He's got this chair that's behind his head. He's got all this distracting stuff. Yeah, and he could be definitely a little bit closer up. I agree. This guy, he's got the big headphones, which to me is a little bit distracting. It's not the end of the world. I actually think his background's pretty simple and not too bad. You've got a little something in the back, but the light on his face is actually decent. Anyone else want to jump in with other critiques?
So the guy on the upper right, we're basically looking at his ceiling. And
exactly.
The light isn't bad behind him at this moment. He has windows behind him. So I mean, if you're at night or something, it doesn't really, and they're off angle, it doesn't really matter. But that could be a problem at a different time. He is also pretty dark, although since I'm pretty dark right here, I don't want to criticize that too much.
No, I know. We're not criticizing. We're just sort of like saying, there's just stuff to learn from. To me, the part of his thing is also that angle, right? He's looking down at us. His eye line is not this way. He's looking down. And
he's
yes,
going to stand up in a second and walk around. So because I'm in BNI, I have a lot of people get up and they're making their lunch. I'm like, what are you doing? It's
right. Why aren't you doing this?
Professionals, they got to stop, sit down.
Right. But I would say the windows here, because of the angle, aren't so distracting because they're really in the background. I think they're okay. You know, the light on his face is not.
If he angle, his windows might be a problem.
Exactly. So, you know, maybe that's why he is at that angle. I don't know. But
I like this other person in the sense that I really like, the one thing I do like about all of this is like a little peek into people's homes and I mean, they're letting you in where they are. So I'm not interested in, you know, people are sitting in their beds or behind them. I'm like, what are these people doing? But, you know, people often have like a little bit of artwork or a little bit of something in the background. And actually, personally, I really like that. Like if I was going to take a video of that, that's a lot of stuff going on. But it gives me a feeling of who she is.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I think my only issue with her is she's got a lot of headroom. I think she could lighten up her headroom a little bit and maybe not have the light growing out of her head. But I think overall, yeah, she did an okay job there. So, so that was sort of most of my, oh gosh, we're already almost at 6 o'clock. Again, this is just about doing the best that you can with what you have. I mean, no one's expecting like a professional shot.
Yes.
These, right? It's just doing the best you can and making it the least distracting as possible. Honestly, everyone's shot looks decent to me.
No. Yeah, thank you so much. This was really helpful.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is great.